Hi, Susan.
Good morning.
Just another minute or so. Do we have anyone else on the phone besides Joe Brocious?
Hey, Ann, this is Holly. One of the numbers should be mine.
Perfect. Thanks, Holly. And I saw Brad Conley just joined. So that gives us a quorum of 7. And we probably have a few others going to hop too. Any other board members just join us? We have Brian Wright on the phone. There we go. Okay. All right. Mr. Chair, we have 8 members confirmed. So we have a quorum.
All righty. Can you hear me okay? All right, good. All right. Thank you all for being here. We'll try to move quickly. Let's see. We need to do roll call, or do you got that taken care of? You got a good count?
I can do all for you. Yep. Chief Solberg.
Here.
Kent Volkmer. Joe Brocious.
Here.
Sheriff Dedman. Director Jorgensen. Susan Trask for Director Jorgensen. Colonel Silbert.
Walter Mercer for Colonel Silbert.
Alistair Adele. I do know that Leslie was sick today, so she was planning on attending. Sheriff Paul Penzone. Chief Frank Alanis.
Present.
Robert Smith.
Here.
Brian Wright.
Here.
And Brad Conley. I think it's
all right.
here.
And
all right.
As you said, we have the quorum, so thank you. Start out by hopefully everyone had a chance to review the November 19th, 2021 Board of Director meeting minutes. Any questions on that? And if not, if I can get a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll motion to approve.
Motion to approve the November minutes.
I think we got Robert in. Who is the second?
Brian Wright.
Yeah.
Brian Wright. All right. Thank you. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Next order of business is board chair. I've been chair, I think, for 2 years now, and I'm more than willing to continue in my role. But it is our opportunity to shuffle the deck if anyone would like to do so. So if anyone would like to nominate themselves or make a motion for the chair, that would be the time.
Given the silence, I would nominate Chief Solberg to do it again.
All right. Thank you.
Joe Brocious, second.
Thanks, Joe. All right. Any other nominations? Otherwise, we'll close that part out. All right. Do we have to revote me in? All right.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. If we can have a vote on the motion to keep me as the chair for another year of the board. All in favor, say aye.
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 Should I abstain on that? I don't know if I have to or not, but yes, I'm willing to
Holly?
do it. So
Okay. Is that how that
Yeah,
works?
let's
Okay.
do that again, Chief Solberg.
okay. All right. Once again, vote for me as chair.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your confidence and/or spite for not taking it, however you want to term it. But I appreciate it. I'll do my best to not screw it up. Do we need to do any of the board or legislative moves, or are we good there?
We need a vice chair.
Okay. Do it again. Can we get a nomination for vice chair? Kent's currently our vice chair. Or Kent, are you willing to stay in that position
I'm
again?
happy to stay in the position if nobody else wants it. However, if somebody else wants it, please.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other nominations other than Kent? Okay, well, I'll take my first action of the year and nominate Kent as vice chair. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
And did you get that?
I did. Thank
All right.
you.
All in favor of Kent as returning as vice chair, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Do we need to do other chair positions too, Ann? Sorry.
Yes, they, those are just, I don't believe those are action items. I think you just make those appointments for.
Okay. On our committees, is there any changes that everyone willing to? Robert, you have 2 or 3. Are you good to keep those, or do you need to scale back at all?
No, I'm fine. And obviously with legislation, I know I get a great deal of input and help from Mr. Volkmer.
Okay. And I'm good to keep this law enforcement subcommittee. And then let's see, who else do we have? Vertical prosecution.
Mhm.
That's Maricopa County. She's not here, but in her absence, we'll keep her there
Okay.
unless somebody wants to take it over. And I think that's it. Did I hit them all?
Public awareness.
Public
Which is
awareness.
also
Robert, you good to
Robert.
keep that?
I'm fine.
Okay. And I think that's it. All right. So if we don't need to take action on that, we'll keep the board chairs or the committee chairs as they are. And move on to the next item. Director McGuffin, I believe you are up next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good morning. I'll start with a few updates. First off, I would like to draw your attention to the annual report. It has been completed and sent to all the people that normally receive it, which is the Governor's Office, Secretary of State, legislative leadership, and the state archives. And then each of you has been provided within your board materials. So if you haven't taken a look at it, I would just encourage you to do that. We think it's a fairly short read. It's about 20 pages or so, but there's a lot of good information in there. It doesn't always change a lot through the from year to year, but it does represent a tremendous amount of effort on the part of the staff at ATA. We start work on it pretty early, and then we end up doing a lot of waiting for statistics and then a lot of review and a lot that goes into it. So with that, I'd like to acknowledge the work of Anne, who does a lot of the narrative and a lot of the review for us, and then Amanda, who does all of the graphics and all of the formatting and all of the creative design that goes into it. And then Frank Ceballos also has a role with reviewing and doing all of the financials. So they put a lot of effort into it. So I hope that you read it, and I hope it's valuable information for you. Moving on to the Watch Your Car program. Watch Your Car enrollment is active once again in MVD now. It was turned on January 12th, and in the first week we had 55 new enrollments. So we're anticipating at least by history, that could be around 300 a month. So we'll see what comes in the next few weeks. As I think I've mentioned before, we're all set with mailing materials as far as envelopes and decals and things like that. We have an in-person meeting scheduled for February 3rd, where the staff will come together. We'll do all of the mail processing for anything that needs to go out. And we're also going to really start the review of the materials that are associated with the program, in particular with the outreach effort that will be going on. So with some of the projects we've had at the end of the year, that has certainly been put on the back burner, but we will start soon in early February. The next update is the database project. It's been, of course, with the contractor building that, the web service and connection to DPS. So we've been kind of removed from all of that, but there has been a handover from the contractor, who is Computer Products of Illinois, to DPS for user testing. And this is basically where DPS takes it and they just start running all the tests to see if it's working well with their system, and they're basically getting what they paid for. There is a meeting next week between CPI, Planet Technologies, and Planet Technologies is the company that hosts the database, and DPS. And at that meeting, they will attempt to resolve any issues that DPS has found with the web service, and basically prepare for DPS acceptance of that product, which we expect to occur in early February to mid-February. Just depends really on how the testing goes. We thought it was going to be a little bit earlier than that. DPS has had some delays on their end when it comes to testing. I think it all has to do with staffing. So it's running maybe 2 weeks later than what we thought, but still really right on schedule from what we're expecting. So the next thing I'd like to cover is once again, we're now halfway through the fiscal year, and it's time for us to come to the board for we would like to enter into another interagency service agreement with DPS. This is basically where we take the money that has been saved from having ATA salaries being paid partially by DIFI, and so that allows us to accumulate some funding within ATA division, and that funding has been, at least last year, in 2 phases, was sent over to DPS to purchase task force vehicles. So we would like to do that again. We generally do that, or like to do that, in January, so it gives the task force an opportunity to order vehicles, and depending on how long that takes to actually get those vehicles in, it gives them a head start. They can receive the vehicles probably, if all goes well, sometime in the spring. And then by the end of the fiscal year, I'll come back to the board and ask for your approval to do a second ISA, which will allow those vehicles to be built with the police equipment and radios and such. So this year, once again, we have $200,000 that we've accumulated right now that we can send to DPS. So what I would ask is that we enter into an ISA agreement with DPS and transfer $200,000 to them. Probably, we make those transfers happen within a couple weeks or so after board approval.
Okay, can we get a motion on that, or is any questions before we make a motion? Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to enter into the interagency service agreement per how it was just laid out in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kent. All right, all in favor of the transfer of $200,000 for the vehicles through the IGA, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we'll have to have DPS recuse.
Oh, Mercer, did you recuse yourself, or do? All right, I always screw up the votes. Let's do it again. We will recuse DPS, Major Mercer. Please do not vote. If we can have we have the motions. If we can just vote again, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Thank you, Ann.
Mhm.
Director, back to you.
I probably should have mentioned that we believe that this was, by apportioning those salaries between ATA and DIFI, we believe that this was OSPB intent for how we would manage this money. We have, with the last one, with the last ISA that you approved for last fiscal year, we included not only vehicle purchase, but vehicle buildup. And with this one, after discussion with Director Daniels, we will probably make the ISA fairly, I guess, inclusive and to do vehicle purchase, vehicle buildup, and any IT projects. So we might be able to use some money along the way with, for the database. So we're just thinking that money really is at the discretion of the DIFI director. And I've had that discussion with him and he has approved the use of that. But for now, we think that the best use of that money is for, as it really was intended, which is for vehicles. So thank you for allowing us to do that. For the final item that I have today, Amanda, if I can have the presentation presented. So at the November meeting, the board asked me to kind of determine where we could spend some money from the fund balance that is accumulating and sits somewhere north of $7 million now. And so this is an exercise that we do generally every year, and it's usually done in kind of late summer. And then we kind of decide what we're going to push forward to OSPB. And then we did that as a standalone agency. Now that we're with DIFI, of course, we need to make sure that what we are recommending is right in line with what DIFI recommends to go up to OSPB. We want to make sure that, that certainly we can't move separately from DIFI at this point. So we're kind of used to doing this. So this is a little bit early for us now, but it's still a good exercise for us. I will tell you that what I'm going to present today is kind of as it exists today. There's a legislative session that's open right now, and it's very possible that things will change. I'm convinced that all of these numbers will change, but we think as it sits today that this is an accurate reflection of kind of what we're looking at. So if I can go to the next slide, what I've done is I've broken it down by the programs, and because each of the programs is kind of unique, and I think it's important that the board understands where the funding is coming from. And I'm hoping that the way that it's being presented to you today makes sense. It was, I thought, the easiest way to do it. So I'll just be referring to certain boxes as I go along. The first one in the top left is the current DPS salary and ERE. And again, this is only DPS people on the task force, so it does not include the outside agency. But the salary is 1.2 million, and the employee-related expenses, or ERE, sits at 1.3 million for a total of 2.5. Now, next year, something really good happens. It's starting in July, and that DPS salary remains consistent at 1.2 million. But the ERE drops to 885,000, and that is the result of a large influx of money into the public safety retirement system by the state. About $500 million, from what I understand, went in there, and it has dropped the ERE rate about 40%. So that equates to a savings in fiscal year 23 of $436,000. So what we did is we went to the task force and we asked them, give us your, a conservative ask. If you could fill some positions, what would you ask for? And they came back and they said, we would like to have 2 detectives, 1 for each of the Phoenix squads, which would make them more operationally able, I guess, because now they combine a lot of their resources with 2 squads. But this would allow squads to operate independently if they need to, with 6 detectives on each squad. They asked for an analyst, which we're in support of, because we think we're going to really need an analyst when the database comes online. And they wanted to fund the intelligence research specialist at 100%. Right now, they fund at 50%, and that IRS is shared between outside the task force as well. There's also outside agency. We spend about $915,000 on outside agency reimbursement. We expect that number to go to 960, which equates to a 5% increase. That's historically what DPS has seen year over year. And so that's a $45,750 addition. So basically the staffing increase that the task force would like to have, and then just the normal kind of inflationary costs brings that number to $474,000. So the request being 474, the savings being 436, that means that we would need to ask for just shy of $38,000 to make all of this happen. So really not a significant amount of money for that. And please, if you have any questions along the way, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to move through each of these programs as quickly as I can.
Director, just a quick question on outside agency. Do they reimburse just salary, or do they do EREs as well?
Well, it's 75% of, and I don't know if Frank is on the call right now, but
yes, Director, I'm on. Members of the board, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it's 75% of salary and ERE.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
So Amanda, if we can go to the next slide. Okay, task force vehicles. The task force provided me with a spreadsheet of their vehicles. It looks like they have about 35 vehicles in their fleet. I expect that number, can slide by a couple vehicles here or there, depending on what they have going. There is no service life projection at DPS, so we have made the assumption that it's about a 6-year service life on a vehicle. Some vehicles will go longer than that, some will go shorter, and but we think 6 years is generally a pretty good number to work with. And if you had, 35 vehicles and a 6-year rotation, you would normally do about 6 vehicles a year. I think we can get away with less because we had the large influx of vehicles last year into the task force. So we've made the decision just for the purpose of this. It certainly can be changed, but 5 replacement vehicles per year is, I guess, what I would recommend. Moving on to the next box, you can see that the average price of those 14 vehicles they purchased last year was just under $40,000. To add emergency equipment and the labor is $15,000 per vehicle. The radio and the antenna is about $8,500, making the total cost of one vehicle $63,000 and change. So again, using the projected savings that we just did on the ISA, which is around $335,000 based on the apportioned salaries. With that savings and then vehicles costing $316,000, it leaves us good at $18,555. I would expect that we can anticipate vehicle price increases and labor increases and equipment increases. So I would expect that $18,000 will probably get soaked up pretty fast in these other vehicles. But I guess my thought on this is that we're in a pretty good spot with task force vehicles. So, next slide. So vertical prosecution, kind of on the same thing we did with the task force. We went to each of these agencies and we asked them, what would it cost to make you whole for the people that you have assigned to the vertical prosecution program, whether it be attorneys or administrative staff? What are you actually paying them? Because we know that historically, we have only been able to fund in the mid 80 percentile of what it costs agencies. The program as a whole is only funded at about 84% or so. So the agencies came back and they told us what they're actually paying, because we know that counties are actually picking up the tab on some of those vertical prosecutors and staff where the grant is not fully covering. The one big increase that I would note to you is Pinal County. Pinal wrote a justification letter to the ATA saying we think that we could add another prosecutor, and that's what we would ask for. So you see that reflected in the Pinal County number as well there. That would bring them up to 2 prosecutors and would put them on par with Maricopa and Pima, who also have 2 prosecutors. So the total ask on that is 1.367. We have historically funded, and I say we, the board has historically funded the vertical prosecution grant at $930,942. That has been done that way for the last 5 years. So if all of this were to stay kind of as it is, it would leave a deficit of $436,000 that we would need to supplement into this program. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Trask.
Yes. Question for you, only because I know I've been joining your calls for a little bit of time here, and there's a lot of things that I really am not familiar with. So I feel comfortable now that I'm going to start asking some questions, only just for an understanding. What exactly is the vertical prosecution grant?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the verdict. I guess I'm not sure I understand exactly what your question is.
So where are these coming from, and what have we typically used them for?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the vertical prosecution is our second largest grant program. Vertical prosecution is a model that's used by prosecutors, and it basically is a cradle to grave, I guess you would say, method where one prosecutor or a small unit of prosecutors is assigned to prosecute auto theft cases. And the idea behind it is that they take the case from the initial appearance all the way through sentencing, and we think, and I think there's evidence to show that there is better outcomes, when it comes to higher sentences and or longer sentences and maybe higher restitution when a prosecutor handles the case, because they're familiar with the case completely all the way through. It's not parsed out between different units to handle different parts of it. And I would welcome any of the prosecutors to add on to that and correct me if I'm wrong. So,
Chair, if I can supplement. So, Susan, the easiest way to explain it is sometimes auto theft isn't the most sexy thing in the world. And what we discovered is when it's just another case, sometimes prosecutors weren't giving it the attention that it really deserved. I can tell you internally what we discovered is auto theft is oftentimes the precursor to more serious offenses. It graduates very quickly. So what happens in our office is, and Nick's probably on the call with us right now, but Nick is our assigned auto theft. That's all he handles is auto theft cases. He works directly with the auto theft task force. They have a great relationship with them. They can really work from the start of a case and work on a case, and we can give them, this is what we need to prosecute. This is what we're looking at. And then he is dedicated to that. I can tell you, I'm not trying to make the pitch, but his caseload in Pinal County is now so high that he's actually higher than all my other prosecutors. We really don't want to send those cases anywhere because we know how successful this program's been. That's part of the reason we're asking for it. But yeah, he's there. He's the one that takes it to a grand jury. He's the one that has the case. He's the one that negotiates the case. He's the one that sentences the case. And then those are the reports that you often hear. But really, it's just a program to make sure that auto theft is being taken seriously. The other thing, sometimes it slips behind, and if it's at 3 different prosecutors, we really don't know what a problem some of these defendants are in our community, where we have, at least in our office, one focal point. I know Maricopa and Pima County have a team that work together on it. So that's really what it's designed, is to make sure we hold these people accountable, make sure that we get adequate sentences and they don't really slip through the cracks.
That makes sense. And I did actually do a ride along with Detective Warner back in November to try and get a better understanding of this whole program, which was really helpful. And he did share some of that information as far as, those who take it, it's a lead into other crimes, right? So, okay, thank you for that. I really was just trying to get a better understanding of what this was. So thank you.
Robert, you have your hand up.
Yes. So to carry forward with County Attorney Volkmer, here in Maricopa County and at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, it is quite comprehensive. That's how I initially started with this group, I guess, 10 years ago, on behalf of County Attorney Montgomery. So it's way on the front end. So all of the detectives, when I was tenured, and actually Mr. Hartman was in my bureau in and around that time as well, way on the front end. So if surveillance is going on, if possible search warrants need to be generated, if after arrests grand jury needs to be conducted, the assigned auto theft task force prosecutor, and in my tenure there were two of us, we do everything. So we're available arguably 24/7 to give immediate service. The swing as well is, as a Maricopa County attorney, super busy in Maricopa Superior Court, as we all know. And so the duty's dedicated and it's defined. So the assigned deputy county attorney does not get pulled away into working other files that are unrelated from the auto theft. Additionally, when certain defendants are arrested, if they have a battery of open charges ranging all over the place, so they may have open drug charges, open violent crimes, the vertical auto theft prosecutor will be assigned all the open files related to a defendant facing auto theft charges from the vehicle auto theft task force. So it provides benefits to the deputy county attorney assigned in the huge mechanism of, in this case, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. And there's a funding issue. So since the grant is in place, it allows the deputy county attorney to focus without pushback from his or her chain of command. And that's the way it was. I guess I did it for 4 years, starting back in 2012. 2002. 2012. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to law enforcement grants. Law enforcement grant dollars are what's left over after the task force and vertical prosecution grants are awarded. As everyone knows, those are the two big grantees, and so there's not a lot left over. There is a grant appropriation that we work within, so it's not like we can spend, any money that we can only spend the money that the legislature tells us we can spend. And so for fiscal year 23, and we know this probably is going to change, but $5.3 million is what we're expecting. The task force grant and the vertical prosecution will take the majority of that. It leaves generally every year around $26,000 left over. And out of that, we fund law enforcement grants, which include equipment and training and public outreach, things like that. So last year we were able to take $25,980, and that was awarded by the board to 3 agencies, 3 police agencies for mostly equipment, but some outreach material as well. So we've always haven't had a lot of enthusiasm for these grants, and I think it's mainly because there's not a lot of money there. This is the number that we came up with internally at ATA, was to add $50,000 to that appropriation, and that would have given us somewhere around that 75,000 mark. And we think that we could do a lot more outreach to the agencies and try to encourage them to come up with innovative programs around the state to combat, all types of vehicle crime. So again, this number is really arbitrary in that we think we can spend it, and but it's probably not too much. We wouldn't want to to return a lot to the fund balance, but we think that it's very possible to spend $75,000 in this category. The database project, $120,000. This only is a one-year thing because the budgets are done 1 year, but there's two of these areas that are subject to annual escalation costs. The database subscription starts at $120, and over a 5-year span, it increases by about 12.5%. The database enhancements is simply an area that the company recommends that we might want to think about, and that is so we could create different types of management reports or have them configure things that would actually work well for us if we determine what those things might be. And historically, they have seen that with other agencies that there's usually a need for, hey, we want this. Well, those add-ons, are not part of the subscription. So that's something we would ask for just in anticipation of needing them. And then DPS system maintenance, that connection to ACIC costs DPS about $10,460 a year. It is subject to a 5% escalation annually. Doesn't mean it's going to, but the company writes that in there so they can add on to it if they need to. The total is $150,460. There is no funding for that anywhere else in the agency or in the the ATA fund. So we would need an appropriation for that. And next slide. So this is a summary of what I've just gone over. Lists the requested increase at 1.38 million. The deficit, some of these kind of different funding sources that impact this comes out to about $675,000 that we would need to ask for. And you can go to the next one, Amanda. So at this point, certainly willing to take any questions or comments, and then also determine the next steps that the board would like me to take. Guess what's kind of on the table is to endorse what has been offered, to reject it, to amend it somehow, and then my next step would be, I believe, to present this to DIFI leadership, and for consideration of how this factors into what DIFI will do during the next opportunity, which is going to be late summer.
That was my initial question, Director, is that if these changes were made, we'd be looking at FY24 for potential budget recommendation changes. It's too late to do 23.
It is. The executive budget was just released about a week ago, and so there are some amendments. There were some increases in appropriation, which would cover DPS raises in the executive budget, which is really good news. And I credit Director Daniels for that, because he has, anytime there's talk of a DPS raise, he has been in communication with OSPB analysts saying, hey, don't forget about us, because it always, as we know, it's always run about a year or so behind. But he has kept that, and so they included in the executive budget their recommendation, which of course doesn't cross the finish line until probably May or June when the budget gets finalized. We'll see if it's there, but it's certainly necessary to have it in there, and it's great to have it in the executive budget early, because if you don't see it in the executive budget, you're probably not going to get it.
I appreciate that. My only other thought is I like everything you said. I think Kent was the one who brought this up at the last meeting, and our fear is, I think we have $7 million in that reserve fund, and when budgets are made, they like to sweep money to fund other things, and not wanting to lose money that's been designated for this purpose. Is there anything else because it was a very exact proposal you just went through. Is there anything else that, you know, kind of a wish list type thing that needed to be thrown in there that, you know, regardless of whether we think we'll get it, you know, sometimes planting that seed a couple years later, they may actually fund it. So is there anything else that you have thought of that was cut just because you didn't think we'd get it that we may want to add in?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I will tell you that we came at this kind of in a conservative way. We didn't add a lot to the task force, didn't ask them to you know, really give us some out there numbers. We think that, and part of that's because we think that staffing is going to be such an issue for these agencies that giving manpower. I mean, so to ask for funding for manpower that will never show up, we think is really not the best form either. So we really wanted to try and limit it to really what's needed and what we thought the agencies could, you know, produce truly in the form of manpower, which I just think is really one of the biggest threats looming for the task force is being able to keep those people in these specialty positions. Besides that, you know, Frank Ceballos and I worked on this, and I guess to answer your question, we did not see anything else that we would really want to, you know, I guess to ask for as far as the budget. We think that if we were to get what was here, if that were to go forward, that would put the task force and vertical prosecutors and, you know, our big programs in good shape.
With those 2 additional detective positions on that proposal, did that include vehicles in your vehicle slide, or was that included in your replacement cycle?
I think, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, 35 vehicles is what the task force showed us. There's about 26 sworn, I believe. So each of those squads have swing cars, which are, you know, extra cars in case a vehicle goes down. So I think there's room in that to add 2 detective cars easy enough. I don't see that as being a big problem. But to answer your question directly, I did not increase the number of vehicles to accommodate those detectives.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Kent? You're on mute, Kent.
Just realized that. Sorry. Director, this is more of a suggestion, and I don't know that we'd be able to accomplish it for this coming year, but I'd like to plant this seed for this board to consider next time. Even though I've not formally been on the board for 5 years, I've been attending these meetings for about 5 years. And I think about 3 or 4 years ago, which predates Director McGuffin assuming his current role, there was a strong push to expand the vertical prosecution to include essentially all the border counties. So we were looking at adding vertical prosecution in Yuma, in Cochise, I believe even Santa Cruz, if I remember correctly. Again, I think it's too late in the game. I wouldn't advocate for it now because that would really throw a monkey wrench in your proposed budget. But when we're in this position next year, I would ask that we consider expanding, because I remember my colleagues had quite a bit of interest in it. In fact, I think there was a little bit of a kerfuffle because one of my colleagues didn't take a case and said, wait, there's already vertical prosecutors that are getting paid to work with the task force. It was an offense that occurred in multiple jurisdictions. And he said, I just don't have the manpower, you know, send it to Pima County. I think that is something that we should potentially explore. I was in favor of it years ago. I understand we weren't getting the money, so it sort of went away. But I would encourage the team to reach out to some of the other county attorneys to see if they'd be interested in expanding the vertical prosecution, where we could really create a buffer between our state and other states and make sure we're holding people accountable.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I don't think it's too late. That's one of the advantages to doing this exercise early. If that's something the board wants us to pursue, we certainly can, and we could do it easily in time for, you know, by the time this proposal would go forward, we would have plenty of time to do that.
Yeah, I concur with Ken. I like that idea, especially with I think they're seeing an increase in a lot of crime and a lot of cross-border issues. And I pulled up my stats, and I'm assuming it's somewhat similar throughout the state. Just in Gilbert, we had a 22% increase in auto theft for 2021, which is only 30 vehicles, but that's still a significant increase for us. And I'm guessing that it's going to be somewhat similar throughout the state, that we saw an increase this year. So it may be warranted.
Chair, I wanted to correct. I said border, and I just want to clarify. When I say border, I don't mean just the international border. I mean the border with California in particular as well. Yeah, the entire border, because we do get people stealing here, fleeing elsewhere. I know Quartzsite, I think we gave a car to a few years ago because they had a serious issue. So I just wanted to clarify, when I say border, I'm not, the international border obviously is included, but I'm saying the entire border of the state of Arizona.
Thanks, Ken. Daniels? The Chief Daniels?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Two quick thoughts on this. One, I think that this is a good thing to consider as we build out our budget for 23. So I would ask for those of you particularly interested in this, Kent, Chief Solberg, having those statistics on increases will be really helpful. So to the extent, if Yuma is interested in this, Yuma County in particular, I think, because we don't have one with them, if they're seeing an increase, that would help me tremendously to make that case with OSPB, to get a sense of, how big of a problem this is and why this increase would be needed. Also, we're going to have a new governor next time around. So I think to the extent we can be armed with a statistical case, obviously I'm going to be building, assuming that I still have my job when the new governor comes in, I'll be building a relationship that I'd like to, if I'm well prepared with data and things like that, that will help tremendously with my credibility with the new OSPB. So just a couple of thoughts there as we think about how to advocate for things like this. Also, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you. Chief Solberg, thank you for being the chair. Kent, thanks for being vice chair. Really appreciate all of your engagement on these issues. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other feedback or suggestions or changes? Okay, I don't think we need a motion, but I think you've got direction. I would say if you need additional stats, I know the system you're trying to get instituted will give you that real-time data. But if you need that real-time data, I think most of the agencies should be able to provide it to you, even if we have to do it manually and send it over to you. So if you need additional data, just let us know. And I agree with Kent's recommendation to include additional counties if they're interested and if they're seeing the justification. So other than that, I like what you proposed, and with those additional ads potentially.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. That concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Frank, you're up for ATA financial update.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm going to share my screen with all of you here in a second. Okay, at the end of December 2021, the fund balance for ATA was $8,425,421. Year-to-date revenue with the first half of the assessment, investment income, and the theft management House bill, we brought in $3,516,845. Appropriation, we have spent during the month of December up to that point, $157,834, leaving us a little over $500,000 to spend. And Mr. McGuffin has already outlined how we're going to spend $200,000, and I'll explain how we're going to spend the rest in the expenditure plan. Grants, we spent over $2,637,000, which gives us an availability of $2,663,979. That's not including the third quarter grants that I'll talk about during the expenditure plan. We still have our SIMS fund of $1,432. Are there any questions about Mr. Kent, go ahead.
Frank, I'm not trying to be difficult, but how did the actual collection compare to our projected collections?
The first half,
Yes.
our projection was 3,521,000. We were 21,000 off of our projection. Our projection was about 2% overall. So for first and second half. So we're kind of on the teetering border of making our projection of the 2% increase over FY 21.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the expenditure plan right now. I will zoom in because I know this is kind of small. All right. Let me move this over and get to where we need to be. So right now, we are in the second half of our assessment. So we are receiving a lot of funds from the insurance companies. So that is going very well, but we will not be able to give you a fixed number until the next board meeting. But as Mr. McGuffin stated, we are going to give $200,000 to DPS for vehicle purchases. We are still intending to purchase laptop computers for ATA staff. We were very successful on purchasing a brand new computer for Amanda so she can continue to do all those ads and not have to redo her work. Now it's on to the rest of the staff on those computers, but we're trying to work with the agency as a whole to get that purchase taken care of. I do want to talk about the grants. ATA and ASD for DIFI have a commitment to get all grants at the beginning of the quarter paid efficiently, timely, and as soon as possible. So third quarter was the first time since I've been working on the grant stuff that we were able to pay all the grantees the first business day of the quarter. So that's including DPS. So there's a lot of things that have to be set up. So a lot goes to the credit to ASD at DIFI and to DPS, Katie over at DPS to get this accomplished. But all the grantees were paid on January 3rd, which was a huge accomplishment, I believe, for everyone. So I just wanted to show that to the board at this time. But are there any questions about the expenditure plan? If not, I would like to move forward to getting this approved to move for the rest of the year.
Any questions from anyone? All right, make a motion to approve the proposed spending plan. Or can I get a motion, I guess?
So moved.
Thank you, Volkmer. Second?
Second.
I believe that was Robert for a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 In his limb.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Frank. Anything else?
No, that's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right, thank you. Ann, Public Awareness and Grant Programs Report.
All right, Mr. Chair, members, staff, we completed our first round of grant compliance, contract compliance reviews. So for the fiscal year 22, which was first quarter for La Paz and Pinal counties. I want to thank the staff and the teams for both of those agencies for presenting all of the documents and all of the information that we requested. Both scored perfect scores and were found to be fully compliant. So I appreciate that. Those counties doing a really great job. Pinal County has had 31 cases for first quarter, which is a lot, it seems. And, we are looking, hopefully someday being able to expand down into that county and hopefully some others. So we have had a few campaigns since our last board meeting. Amanda's going to present some of those. We met back middle of November, so staff was in the process of launching our holiday campaigns. We also did once the 2020 FBI UCR was released, we did a press release on that and a Twitter and social media campaign. So we got quite a bit of interest out of that report from some media. They're always interested in year-end numbers and what the trends are. And then, like I said, we went into the holiday. And and the hotspots, the MSA hotspots by NICB were released, just to more end of year stats. Next slide. And most of these were also utilized in our 2021 annual report. And like Director McGuffin mentioned, if you haven't had a chance to review that report, it's got a lot of great information. Going into the holidays, we did always our Park Smart, Secure Valuables, don't leave, your shopping contents in your vehicle. And currently staff are working on just a general lock it or lose it campaign, which will run end of this month into February. And that's our next slide, I believe, Amanda. So we also incorporated some information that just was released from the Arizona DPS Crime in Arizona report. So we incorporated the crime clock, a vehicle stolen every 33 minutes and 15 seconds. Additionally, these are all graphics done by Amanda, as always, great job. And obviously Arizona is a big trucking community, and so they're always a huge target, and about 25% of the stolen vehicles in Arizona are trucks each year. So those are our campaigns. My last item is fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 grants. We will, just like we did last year, put out a solicitation for the remaining grant funds that we have available for any law enforcement, any other innovative projects. Those we're going to start solicitations for the beginning of February. Those will be due March 8th and presented at the March 24th ATA board meeting. The fiscal year 23 grants for task force and vertical prosecutions, those will be due by April 30th, and I'll put out notices to all the counties. Those will be presented to law enforcement subcommittee in May, and then our full board meeting, which is June 17th. Those will be approved for fiscal year 23. So unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ann. Any questions? All right, thank you. I'm up next, Law Enforcement Subcommittee. There are no updates. So next up, Public Awareness and Subcommittee Report, Robert Smith.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Thank you. And once again, Legislative Subcommittee, anything brewing?
I believe, yeah, so I'm going to defer to my esteemed colleague, Pinal County Attorney Volkmer.
Just very briefly, Chair, we met yesterday, approved the board, approved the proposed spending plan. We're very supportive of it. I just have really one question, and I don't know whether this should be to Jamie or to Ann. I'm trying to craft an email to my colleagues that may be interested in getting the information, and per Director Daniels' suggestion, I'm going to ask them to give stats and data. Who should they direct that to? Do you want it to come to me and then me to send it to you? Do you want them to send it directly? The email is going to say, hey, if you're interested, let us know your numbers, give us as much statistical justification as possible. But obviously I'm not the one making the call, so I just don't know where that information should get routed.
Director McGuffin, do you have they certainly can come through me. That's fine. Or if you want to collect all of them and send them to me and Jamie, either works for me.
I would agree. Normally, Ann, as the grants administrator, would be the recipient of this, and then we would compile everything into something that's easily digestible by the board. So we're happy to do that. So I would say probably Ann would be a good source for that. Keep you clean out of it as far as the middleman. So.
The other thing is, I was going to put a time frame. I can just tell you, running my office, I'm only dealing with fires, so I was going to give them like 3 weeks to get information in. Is that fair to you, or do you need even a tighter time frame than that?
I think that's doable.
I would agree. I think we have the kind of the luxury of time kind of on our side because of the timing of this exercise. So we have several months easily to put this together.
Don't say that. We'll use every last second of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Nothing else on legislative? All right, thank you. Vertical prosecution. I don't think we have a rep today.
We
So
don't, but
Ann?
I know we've got several folks on the phone. I believe Nick Hartman was the first to arrive, so we'll start with Nick from Pinal County.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Ford. I just want to highlight a couple things. Yesterday, I was able to attend the AATA meeting. That's an invaluable source of exchanging information. I was able to meet the new captain, exchange information about that, talking about resources. I think within 5 minutes, I was already advocating to send more resources to Pinal County. I've been seeing a lot of, in the departmental reports, a lot of our local agencies don't have great training in chop shops, for example, and I've been seeing them in the departmental reports, little tidbits of it, and they just need to be parsed out. So I was actually talking to Detective Charlie Warner as well, that kind of extended the opportunity for me, if I see that, to hook that local agency up with the DPS task force and work well together with them, getting that specialized training. I've also offered to go to local agencies with Detective Warner and kind of give kind of co-teaching as far as investigation and what me as a prosecutor is looking for. So I think that's going to be very useful in parsing out these big cases, because I know there's got to be some big chop shops, and when there's chop shops, there's usually a lot of drugs and a lot of stolen cars. And I think that it's kind of fruitful in Pinal County if those resources can be allocated over here. I think we could just saturate it and get it cleaned up. So I think that would be fantastic. And once again, the AATA meetings, I'm glad they're moving back to monthly, because I think they're an invaluable resource of exchanging information, what us vertical prosecutors are doing and what on the ground level the detectives are doing, and what they're seeing in Maricopa County, Pima County, all the counties, and what I'm seeing. And, Pinal County is interesting just geographically, if you take it, just because it's in between Pima and Maricopa County. So a lot of my stolens are locally, my local jurisdiction, as well as being stolen from Maricopa County and being brought here and recovered here, or Pima or other counties. Another point that I wanted to talk about is there was a case recently, State versus Jimmy Miranda. It was theft of means and altering a VIN. The defendant had 3 priors. The ignition was manipulated. The paint was altered. It was stolen out of Mesa, Arizona. It was recovered in Casa Grande. And I was able to get a sentence on that case of 7 years in the Department of Corrections with a 3-year supervised probation tail. But another case that kind of highlights the vertical prosecution is State versus Martin Franco. It wasn't a task force case. It was a local case, but there was task force elements in it, and I'll explain. Basically, Martin Franco was working with a crew, stole the vehicle in front of a victim's residence, took that vehicle to a Circle K, which fantastic Circle K with tons of security video. But there was also another car with the stolen car. It was obvious that these people knew each other and communicating. And one of those members was Francisco Biarco. As the board knows, I've talked extensively about Nico Biarco. I have 4 cases with Nico Biarco. Those cases hopefully are going to trial. I think they're exhausting all delays. But Francisco Biarco, we couldn't time specifically to the car. However, him being a member and working with the crew, with the Biarcos, kind of speaks volumes. And, I put Francisco Biarco, this was a 2019 case. I put for Francisco Biarco in DOC. He recently got out and then got popped on a MIW, and he's away again for 2.5 years. So that's good that Francisco Biarco's behind bars. Nico Biarco's been behind bars for a long time. And with this case, Martin Franco, he led the police on a chase over 43 miles. Multiple agencies were involved. He was putting a lot of people in danger. Luckily, he didn't collide with any members of the community. He ended up driving off into a canal, crashing, and then leading into a foot pursuit. At sentencing, because the defendant did have 4 priors, he was on parole. He was on parole for theft of means of transportation. I think he was on parole for about 72 hours. When he got out of DOC, he was put on parole for about 72 hours, and then he commits this crime. So I conveyed that to the judge. We asked for rather large sentence of 30 years. Of course, defense asked for the least amount of time that he could get was the 11.25 running the Towmont unlawful flight concurrent. The judge didn't want to give me everything, so he gave me 29.5 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections on that case. So I think that's a huge win, because obviously we're taking down one defendant, but obviously one of those crew members as well. And then if you count Francisco Biarco, that the Biarco family's just been all over Pinal County. I think that's a huge win. And also just kind of an example how linking the vertical prosecution, seeing the same people and working with the task force and the local communities, how critical the vertical prosecution program is. Thank you very much.
You're on mute, Ann.
I think we have Yvette from La Paz County on the phone. Or I thought we did.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Hi,
I don't have any updates. Tori she's got a big court calendar today, and she actually had some medical issues going on last week, so we didn't really have time to coordinate, but I know she's doing good stuff.
Great. Thanks, Yvette, and thank you for submitting all of your CCR documents. Appreciate it. Great job.
Thank you.
And I believe we have Frank Woods on the phone from Maricopa County.
Nothing to add from me today. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else calling in for a vertical prosecution report that I've missed? Oh, Matt's here. Matt Ashton from Pima County.
So Matthew Ashton from Pima County. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. In Pima County, we haven't had too many sentencings lately. People tend to not like taking pleas over Christmas. So we didn't wind up having too many sentencings going in January. But I think more interestingly, we had a couple of different no bond hearings that myself and our second vertical prosecutor who's on the call, Brad Terrace, did. The one that I did was a guy who has 15 priors out of the state of California. I think 9 of them, if I counted right, are for auto theft, and now he's pending on 2 auto theft cases with us. And then the one that Brad did, the guy smashed into a couple of our task force detectives' unmarked trucks in an attempt to get away, but they caught him, they detained him, and they were able to get a great case for us out of that.
All right, great. Thanks, Matt. And welcome to Brad Terrace, new to your division. Anybody else on the phone? I believe that's it.
All right, thank you. Captain Borquez, task force update.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good morning. For the task force, in the month of December, the task force recovered 124 stolen vehicles valued at about $2.1 million with 23 arrests. In the month of January, so far, the task force has recovered 84 stolen vehicles with a value of $1.3 million. 22 arrests, 5 of those had some drug charges, seized about 9.9 grams of meth, 97 fentanyl pills in those arrests. We had, in the month of January, also had 122 other agency assists. The Pima squad actually did a one-day detail in Yuma and went down and helped our task force member down in Yuma for the day. During that day, they recovered an unoccupied stolen and one occupied stolen where they need 2 arrests. It was really nice to get out there and help Yuma PD. Staffing for Phoenix, they got hit with some COVID. We had a detective who had a really close call in his battle with COVID, but he's recovering. He's going to be okay, but he's not returned back to work yet. We've added a detective from AATA as well as another detective from DPS. They both replaced other detectives who have since moved on. We have a DPS detective retiring next month in February. We'll be testing to replace that position as well with another DPS detective. Upcoming events that we have moving forward on the task force, we're going to be taking more of a proactive approach by using various investigative techniques to identify these stolen vehicle theft rings and these chop shops. And we're also going to concentrate our efforts more in the cities that we have task force members, which, like Mr. Hartman said, I talked to him yesterday, includes Pinell County. So we're going to get out to those areas more. The current trends that we see the most of is the early 2000 Chevy pickups being stolen. Seems to be the hot vehicle right now. Next week, we have a 3-day detail scheduled. One of those days we were requested by the Glendale Police Department to come out and help them with their auto theft problem. So one of those days of that detail will be dedicated to helping Glendale. And that's going to conclude my report.
Thank you, Captain. Appreciate it. Next, call to the public. Is there any members of the public that have any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. Any additional reports or any information to the board or for the board or from the board?
Captain, this is Sheriff Joe Dedman.
Hey, Sheriff, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Hey, I just want to let the captain know that there's a tri-state intel briefing in Laughlin at the end of the month on the extremists intel. So I just wanted to let you know.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any additional information? All right. That will conclude our meeting today. Our next meeting will be March 25th, 10 a.m. And thank you all for adjusting your schedules for March. Anne has her hand up. I probably missed something.
Motion to adjourn.
I didn't forget it this time. I was just wrapping up. I appreciate it. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we got Robert for the first and Sheriff Devin for the second. All in favor of saying goodbye? Aye.
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 All right, y'all.
Have a good
Happy
day.
New Year.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.